Joseph Perry's hand brushes against Lara's collarbone, and her gasp shatters the tense silence of the Denobulan conference hall. "You want to touch my breast," she exclaims, her voice a mix of shock and indignation. All eyes turn to Joseph, the human diplomat now at the center of an interstellar incident. He stands frozen, his mind racing to comprehend the gravity of his accidental transgression. The Denobulan representatives recoil, their faces contorted in a mix of disgust and outrage. Joseph's fellow human delegates exchange worried glances, aware that years of careful negotiation hang in the balance. I apologize," Joseph stammers, raising his hands in a placating gesture. "It was unintentional. I meant no offense." His words, meant to soothe, only fan the flames of Denobulan fury. Lara takes a step back, her hand protectively covering her collarbone. The other Denobulans murmur among themselves, their voices rising in a crescendo of anger. Security personnel converge on Joseph, their stern faces leaving no doubt about the seriousness of the situation. "Ambassador Perry, you are under arrest for assault," the lead security officer announces, his voice cold and official. "Please come with us." Joseph's heart races as he's escorted from the conference hall. The human delegation erupts into frantic whispers, realizing the potential consequences of this cultural misstep. As the doors close behind him, Joseph catches a glimpse of the Denobulan High Council members huddled together, their expressions grave. In his quarters, now serving as a makeshift cell, Joseph paces restlessly. A human cultural attaché enters, her face etched with concern. "Ambassador, we have a situation," she begins. "The Denobulans have an organ near their collarbone that serves a similar function to human breasts in child rearing. It's extremely sensitive, and touching it is a severe taboo." Joseph sinks into a chair, the weight of understanding crushing down on him. "So when I accidentally touched Lara, you committed what they consider a serious assault," the attaché confirms. "The High Council is in emergency session. There are protests forming outside the conference center. Anti-human sentiment is spreading rapidly." A knock at the door interrupts them. A Denobulan official enters, his face a mask of stern formality. "Ambassador Perry, the High Council has reached a decision. You have two options: stand trial under Denobulan law, or Earth must agree to significant concessions in our ongoing trade negotiations." Joseph's mind races, considering the implications. A trial could mean severe punishment, possibly jeopardizing his career and freedom. But the concessions could set human Denobulan relations back years, potentially leading to conflict. "There must be another way," Joseph pleads. "Could I speak with Lara to apologize and explain?" The official hesitates, then nods curtly. "I will convey your request to the Council. But be warned, Ambassador Perry, the fate of our species' relations now rests on your ability to navigate our differences." As the official leaves, Joseph turns to the window, watching the growing crowd of protesters below. He takes a deep breath, steeling himself for the diplomatic challenge of his life. The future of human Denobulan relations hangs in the balance, all because of an accidental touch. Joseph's heart raced as he waited for news of his request to speak with Lara. The minutes crawled by, each second feeling like an eternity. Finally, the door to his quarters opened, revealing the stern-faced Denobulan official. "Your request has been granted, Ambassador Perry," the official announced. "Follow me." Joseph was escorted through the winding corridors of the Denobulan diplomatic complex, the tension palpable in the air. They arrived at a secure conference room, where two Denobulan security officers stood guard. As the door slid open, Joseph caught sight of Lara, her posture rigid and eyes wary. Taking a deep breath, Joseph stepped into the room. "Thank you for agreeing to meet with me, Lara," he said, his voice calm despite his inner turmoil. Lara nodded stiffly, her hand unconsciously moving to her collarbone. "Speak, Ambassador. Explain yourself." Joseph carefully chose his words, aware of the weight they carried. "I want to sincerely apologize for my actions earlier. There has been a grave misunderstanding due to our physiological differences." He proceeded to explain human anatomy, emphasizing the lack of sensitive organs in the collarbone area. As he spoke, he noticed Lara's expression shifting from hostility to curiosity. "You mean You didn't intend to... Lara's voice trailed off, her eyes widening with dawning comprehension. No, not at all, Joseph assured her. In human culture, an accidental touch like that would be considered harmless. I had no idea of the significance it held for denobulans. As their conversation deepened, Joseph found himself fascinated by Lara's explanation of denobulan biology. He learned about their complex mating rituals, the role of pheromones, and the importance of specific physical cues. So when I touched your collarbone, Joseph said, realization dawning, it triggered a physiological response related to your mating instincts? Lara nodded, a faint blush coloring her cheeks. Yes, it's a highly sensitive area. Your touch activated certain biological processes. Their discussion continued, the initial tension dissipating as they explored the intricacies of their cultural differences. Joseph found himself drawn to Lara's intelligence and openness, while she appeared increasingly intrigued by his willingness to learn and adapt. Perhaps, Lara suggested, her voice warm, we could use this incident as an opportunity for greater cultural exchange between our species. Joseph smiled, hope blossoming in his chest. I think that's an excellent idea. We could... His words were cut short by a sudden commotion outside the room. The security officers tensed, hands moving to their weapons. The door burst open, revealing a chaotic scene in the corridor beyond. A group of denobulans, their faces contorted with anger, pushed their way into the room. At their head was a tall, imposing figure that Joseph recognized from news broadcasts, Krem, a notorious xenophobic politician. There he is, Krem shouted, pointing an accusing finger at Joseph. The human who dares to assault our women and mock our customs. The mob surged forward, overwhelming the security officers. Joseph felt Lara's hand grasp his arm, pulling him towards a side door. This way, she hissed urgently. They dashed through the doorway, finding themselves in a maze of corridors. The sounds of pursuit echoed behind them as they ran, turning corners and ducking through doorways. Joseph's diplomatic training hadn't prepared him for this kind of physical exertion, but adrenaline propelled him forward. Where are we going? He gasped as they rounded another corner. There's a secure area up ahead, Lara replied, her breath coming in short bursts. We might be able to lose them there. They burst through a set of heavy doors, Lara quickly entering a code to seal them shut. As the lock engaged, they found themselves in a dimly lit room filled with computer terminals and holographic displays. What is this place? Joseph asked, his eyes scanning the unfamiliar technology. Lara's expression was a mix of confusion and concern. I'm not sure. This area is restricted, even to most denobulan officials. As they caught their breath, Joseph's attention was drawn to a nearby terminal. The screen displayed a complex diagram of human and denobulan DNA sequences. Lara, look at this, he said, his voice hushed. They approached the terminal, and Lara's fingers flew over the controls, bringing up file after file. Their eyes widened as they absorbed the information before them. This can't be right, Lara whispered, her voice trembling. These documents, they outline a plan to manipulate human denobulan relations. They're using cultural misunderstandings to gain advantages in trade negotiations. Joseph felt a chill run down his spine. The incident with your collarbone, was it part of this plan? Before Lara could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the complex. The sound of approaching footsteps echoed from beyond the sealed doors. We need to get out of here, Joseph said urgently, but we can't leave without evidence of this conspiracy. Lara nodded, her fingers already working to download the files onto a portable device. Agreed, but how do we escape? Krem and his followers will be searching every inch of the complex. As if in answer to her question, a hidden panel in the far wall slid open, revealing a narrow maintenance tunnel. Joseph and Lara exchanged a quick glance, a silent understanding passing between them. Ready? Joseph asked, extending his hand to Lara. She took it, her grip firm and resolute. Ready. Together they plunged into the darkness of the tunnel, the sounds of their pursuers growing louder behind them. As they navigated the cramped space, Joseph's mind raced with the implications of their discovery. The fate of human denobulan relations now rested in their hands, and the path ahead was fraught with danger and uncertainty. As Joseph and Lara plunged deeper into the maintenance tunnel, the sounds of pursuit faded behind them. The narrow passageway twisted and turned, forcing them to crawl on hands and knees through the dusty confines. "We need a plan," Joseph whispered, his breath coming in short gasps. "We can't keep running forever." Lara nodded, her eyes scanning the dimly lit tunnel ahead. "I have an idea," she replied, her voice low. "The Central Communications Hub. If we can reach it, we might be able to broadcast the evidence we found." Joseph's eyes widened at the suggestion. "That's brilliant, but how do we get there?" Lara paused, her brow furrowing in concentration. "The ventilation system," she said after a moment. "It connects to every part of the complex, including the communications hub." Without warning, the tunnel they were in dead-ended at a large metal grate. Joseph and Lara exchanged a glance, then worked together to carefully remove the grate. As they climbed into the ventilation duct, Joseph couldn't help but notice how close they were forced to be in the confined space. As they crawled through the ducts, Joseph became acutely aware of a sweet, intoxicating scent emanating from Lara. He found himself inexplicably drawn to her, his heart racing not just from exertion, but from a growing attraction he couldn't explain. Lara, for her part, seemed equally affected. Her breathing quickened, and she kept glancing back at Joseph with an intensity that hadn't been there before. Neither of them fully understood the physiological changes occurring between them. Lara's stress-induced pheromone release and Joseph's instinctive response to it. Their journey through the ventilation system was fraught with danger. They encountered a series of security lasers, forcing them to contort their bodies into awkward positions to avoid triggering the alarms. At one point, Joseph had to guide Lara through a particularly tricky section, his hands on her hips as he helped her navigate the narrow space. The contact sent shivers through both of them, adding to the tension building between them. Suddenly, the duct beneath them groaned and buckled. Before they could react, the section collapsed, sending them tumbling toward the floor below. Joseph's hand shot out, grabbing Lara's wrist just as she was about to fall. With a grunt of effort, he pulled her to safety, their bodies pressed close in the confined space. "Thank you," Lara breathed, her face inches from Joseph's. For a moment, they stayed frozen, hearts pounding in unison. The sound of voices below snapped them back to reality. Peering through the gap left by the collapsed section, they saw High Counselor Phlox and Krem engaged in a heated discussion. "The humans' escape has complicated matters," Phlox hissed. "We need to accelerate our plans. Use this incident to push for the expulsion of all humans from denobulan space." Krem nodded, a sinister smile spreading across his face. "Leave it to me. By the time I'm done, the public will be demanding their removal." Joseph and Lara exchanged alarmed glances. The stakes had just risen dramatically. They needed to reach the communications hub and expose the conspiracy before it was too late. As they approached their destination, they encountered another obstacle. The hub was heavily guarded. Joseph and Lara huddled together in the vent, formulating a plan. "I can trigger a false alarm in the east wing," Lara whispered. "It should draw most of the guards away." Joseph nodded, impressed by her quick thinking. "Do it." Lara manipulated a nearby control panel, her fingers flying over the unfamiliar human-designed interface. Moments later, alarms blared in the distance, and they watched as most of the guards rushed off to investigate. Seizing their chance, Joseph and Lara dropped down into the communications hub. Joseph immediately set to work on the transmission console while Lara stood guard at the door. As Joseph's fingers raced across the keyboard, uploading the incriminating files to both human and denobulan networks, the door burst open. Krem stormed in, his face contorted with rage. "You!" he snarled, lunging at Joseph. Lara intercepted him, using her smaller size to her advantage as she ducked under his wild swing. Joseph abandoned the console to join the fray, and soon the three were locked in a chaotic struggle. In the midst of the fight, Joseph's hand inadvertently brushed against Lara's collarbone. The touch sent a jolt of electricity through her body, momentarily stunning her with its intensity. Taking advantage of the distraction, Krem shoved her aside and charged at Joseph. But Lara quickly recovered, her body surging with a newfound energy. She tackled Krem from behind, giving Joseph the opening he needed to land a solid punch, sending the denobulan politician crashing to the floor. With Krem subdued, Joseph returned to the console, his fingers flying over the keys as he completed the transmission. The moment he hit send, alarms blared throughout the complex, signaling the successful broadcast of their evidence. Joseph and Lara stood side by side, breathing heavily as they watched the screens light up with incoming messages. The revelation of the conspiracy spread like wildfire across both human and denobulan channels. Within minutes, they heard the sound of running footsteps approaching. The door flew open, revealing a squad of denobulan security officers. But instead of arresting Joseph and Lara, they moved to detain the now conscious Cream. "Ambassador Perry, Dr. Lara," the lead officer said, nodding respectfully. "We've received orders to escort you to safety. The High Council is in chaos, and there are calls for immediate action against the conspirators." As they were led out of the communications hub, Joseph and Lara found themselves at the center of a whirlwind of activity. Denobulan officials rushed past, shouting orders and coordinating responses to the unfolding crisis. In the midst of the chaos, Joseph and Lara's eyes met. The connection between them had shifted, deepened by their shared ordeal and the mysterious attraction that had blossomed in the ventilation ducts. As they were ushered toward a secure area, both realized that their adventure in the diplomatic complex was nowhere near the end. In fact, it was just the beginning of a much more complex and personal journey. As the adrenaline of their escape and the revelation of the conspiracy began to subside, Joseph and Lara found themselves thrust into a new role, architects of a groundbreaking cultural exchange program between humans and denobulans. In the weeks that followed, they worked tirelessly to lay the foundation for this ambitious initiative. Their shared experience had forged a unique bond between them, one that proved invaluable as they navigated the complex waters of interspecies diplomacy. As they sat in Joseph's temporary office on Denobula, finalizing plans for the upcoming summit, Lara couldn't help but notice the way Joseph's eyes lingered on her. She felt a familiar flutter in her chest, a sensation that had only grown stronger since their time in the ventilation ducts. "I think we're ready," Joseph said, leaning back in his chair with a satisfied smile. "The first official human denobulan cultural summit. Who would have thought we'd be here after everything that happened?" Lara nodded, her antenna twitching slightly, a gesture Joseph had come to recognize as a sign of excitement. "It's remarkable how quickly things have progressed. The neutral space station was an excellent choice for the venue." As they discussed the final details, their hands brushed accidentally while reaching for the same datapad. The contact sent a jolt through both of them, and they quickly pulled away, a faint blush coloring their cheeks. The journey to the space station was uneventful, filled with last-minute preparations and hardly restrained anticipation. As their shuttle approached the massive structure orbiting a swirling gas giant, Joseph and Lara stood side by side at the viewport, marveling at the sight. "It's beautiful," Lara breathed, her eyes wide with wonder. Joseph nodded, acutely aware of her proximity. "A perfect symbol for what we're trying to achieve, a meeting point between our two worlds." Suddenly, the shuttle lurched violently, throwing them off balance. Joseph instinctively reached out to steady Lara, his arm wrapping around her waist. Alarms blared as the pilot's voice crackled over the intercom. "We're experiencing a critical system failure. Brace for emergency landing." The gas giant's largest moon loomed before them, a blue-green orb growing rapidly in the viewport. Joseph and Lara held onto each other as the shuttle plummeted through the atmosphere, the hull groaning under the strain of re-entry. With a bone-jarring impact, the shuttle skidded across the moon's surface, finally coming to rest in a field of iridescent vegetation. As the dust settled, Joseph and Lara disentangled themselves, quickly assessing each other for injuries. "Are you all right?" Joseph asked, his hand lingering on Lara's arm. She nodded, her antenna drooping slightly. "I'm fine, but it seems we're not where we're supposed to be." The pilot emerged from the cockpit, his face grim. "The good news is the atmosphere is breathable for both species. The bad news is our communications array is fried, and the magnetic field is interfering with our emergency beacon." As the reality of their situation sank in, Joseph and Lara exchanged a look of tenacity. They had overcome challenges before, and they would do so again. Gathering what supplies they could salvage from the shuttle, they set out to explore their surroundings. The alien landscape was both beautiful and unsettling, familiar enough to be navigable, yet undeniably foreign. As they crested a hill, a structure came into view in the valley below. Its angular form stood in stark contrast to the organic shapes of the surrounding flora. An outpost, Lara said, her voice tinged with surprise. It appears to be abandoned. They approached cautiously, the airlock sliding open with a hiss as they neared. Inside, they found a scene of hasty departure. Research equipment lay strewn about, and personal belongings were scattered as if their owners had left in a hurry. Joseph moved to a nearby console, his fingers dancing across the unfamiliar interface. "Look at this," he called to Lara, who was examining a rack of mysterious vials. She joined him, her eyes widening as she read the data scrolling across the screen. "These are research logs," she said, her voice hushed. "They were conducting experiments on interspecies compatibility." Joseph felt his heart rate increase, acutely aware of Lara's presence beside him. Compatibility? Between which species? Lara's antenna twitched as she delved deeper into the files. Various species, including humans and denobulans. Their eyes met, the implications hanging heavy in the air between them. The attraction they had been dancing around since their ordeal in the diplomatic complex suddenly felt more real, more tangible. Before they could discuss the discovery further, a distant rumble caught their attention. Through the outpost's viewport, they saw dark clouds gathering on the horizon, crackling with otherworldly energy. "A magnetic storm," Lara said, her scientific curiosity momentarily overriding their personal tension. "We should secure the outpost and wait it out." As they worked to seal the airlocks and power up the facility's protective systems, Joseph couldn't help but steal glances at Lara. The way she moved, the subtle expressions that played across her face, everything about her fascinated him. The storm hit with unexpected ferocity, battering the outpost with gusts of ionized particles. Joseph and Lara found themselves huddled in the facility's core, the only area fully shielded from the magnetic onslaught. In the cramped space, their bodies pressed close together, Joseph became acutely aware of the heat radiating from Lara's skin, the sweet scent that had first captivated him in the ventilation ducts. Lara's breathing quickened, her antenna quivering with an emotion Joseph couldn't quite read. "Joseph," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the howling storm outside. He looked into her eyes, seeing his own desire reflected back at him. Slowly, hesitantly, he leaned in, his lips brushing against hers. The kiss was electric, sending shivers through both their bodies. But as they tried to deepen the embrace, they encountered unexpected difficulties. Their different physiologies, the very thing that had drawn them together in fascination, now presented a frustrating barrier. They pulled apart, both flushed and breathing heavily. Joseph rested his forehead against Lara's, a mix of emotions swirling within him: desire, frustration, and a deep, abiding affection for the remarkable woman before him. "We'll figure this out," he said softly, his hand cupping her cheek. Lara nodded, her antenna gently brushing against his skin in a gesture of intimacy. "Together?" she replied, her voice filled with persistence. As the storm raged outside, they held each other close, their minds racing with the implications of their discovery and the challenges that lay ahead. Little did they know that their time on this mysterious moon was not nearly finished, and that the true test of their relationship and their commitment to bridging the gap between their species was yet to come. As they contemplated their next move, a gentle chime from the outpost's computer system caught their attention. Joseph reluctantly pulled away from Lara and moved towards the console. "It looks like the storm's interference is clearing up," he said, his fingers dancing across the screen. "I'm picking up a signal. Wait, there's someone approaching the outpost." Lara joined him at the viewport, her antenna twitching with curiosity. Through the dissipating clouds, they could make out a small craft descending towards their location. As it landed, a figure emerged, clad in an environmental suit. "Let's go meet our visitor," Joseph said, reaching for Lara's hand. She took it, and together they made their way to the airlock. As the outer door cycled open, they found themselves face to face with a denobulan male. He removed his helmet, revealing a familiar face that made Lara gasp. "Dr. Zoro?" she exclaimed, her antenna drooping in surprise. The denobulan scientist smiled, though there was an edge to his expression that put Joseph on guard. Dr. Lara, Ambassador Perry, what a pleasant surprise to find you here. I had detected your shuttle's crash and came to investigate. Joseph stepped forward, positioning himself slightly in front of Lara. We're grateful for your assistance, Dr. Zoral. Our communications are down, and we could use help contacting our people. Dr. Zoral's smile widened, but it didn't reach his eyes. Of course. But first, I must insist you come with me to my research facility. I have something that might interest you both greatly. As they followed Dr. Zoral to his craft, Joseph and Lara exchanged worried glances. The scientist's demeanor seemed off, and they couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into a potentially dangerous situation. Upon arriving at Dr. Zoral's facility, they were led to a state-of-the-art laboratory. The denobulan scientist moved with awe-inspiring excitement as he pulled up holographic displays showing complex molecular structures. Behold, he announced, the culmination of years of research into interspecies compatibility. This treatment can alter your biology at a fundamental level, allowing for perfect physiological harmony between humans and denobulans. Joseph and Lara stared at the displays, their minds racing. The implications were staggering, but so were the potential risks. Dr. Zoral, Lara began cautiously, while your research is fascinating, we can't possibly agree to undergo such a radical procedure. The ethical implications alone— Ethics? Dr. Zoral scoffed, his facade of politeness crumbling. This is about progress, about breaking down the barriers between our species. Joseph stepped forward, his voice firm. We appreciate your work, Doctor, but we're not interested. Our differences are part of what makes our relationship special. Dr. Zoral's expression darkened. I'm afraid I can't accept that answer. He reached for a nearby console, his fingers flying across the controls. Suddenly, mechanical arms descended from the ceiling, each holding a syringe filled with a glowing blue liquid. Joseph reacted instinctively, tackling Dr. Zoral to the ground. Lara darted to the console, her scientific knowledge allowing her to quickly decipher the controls and retract the mechanical arms. A scuffle ensued as Dr. Zoral's assistants rushed into the lab. Joseph and Lara fought back to back, their recent experiences having honed their teamwork to a fine edge. With a combination of human strength and denobulan agility, they managed to subdue their attackers. Breathing heavily, Joseph secured Dr. Zoral and his team in a nearby storage room. Lara, meanwhile, began searching the lab for anything that could help them contact their people. Joseph, look at this, she called out, her antenna quivering with excitement. In a corner of the lab, partially hidden behind some equipment, sat a prototype long-range communication device. They worked together to activate the device, Lara's expertise with denobulan technology, complementing Joseph's diplomatic knowledge of communication protocols. After several tense minutes, they managed to send out a distress signal to the joint human denobulan search party. With rescue on the way, they turned their attention to the wealth of information stored in the facility's computers. As they sifted through the data, they discovered a trove of research on natural methods to enhance physiological compatibility between humans and denobulans. These techniques, Lara mused, her eyes scanning the data, they're non-invasive. Dietary changes, specialized exercises, meditation. It's fascinating. Joseph looked at her, a mix of curiosity and affection in his eyes. What do you think? Should we give some of these a try while we wait for rescue? Lara nodded, her antenna perking up with interest. It couldn't hurt, and it might help us understand each other better. Over the next few hours, they experimented with the suggested methods. They practiced breathing exercises designed to synchronize their biorhythms and tried meditation techniques aimed at enhancing mutual empathy. As they worked through the exercises, Joseph noticed subtle changes in his perception of Lara. Her scent, always intriguing, became more nuanced and less overwhelming. He found himself more attuned to the slight movements of her antenna, reading her emotions with increasing accuracy. Lara, too, experienced changes. She discovered she could control her pheromone production more precisely, allowing her to express her attraction to Joseph without triggering an overpowering physiological response. Their newfound compatibility led to a moment of intense connection. As they completed a particularly challenging meditation exercise, their eyes met, and the air between them seemed to crackle with energy. Joseph leaned in, his lips meeting Lara's in a kiss that was both tender and passionate. This time there was no awkwardness, no physical barriers. Their bodies seemed to move in perfect harmony, each instinctively knowing how to please the other. As they lost themselves in the moment, the world around them faded away. The sound of approaching spacecraft snapped them back to reality. They quickly straightened their clothes and composed themselves, exchanging a look that was equal parts embarrassment and exhilaration. As the rescue team secured the facility and apprehended Dr. Zoro and his associates, Joseph and Lara found themselves at the center of a whirlwind of activity. They were whisked away for medical examinations and debriefings, their newfound intimacy a secret they kept close to their hearts. During the debriefing process, they learned of the impact their disappearance had had on human-denobulan relations. The joint rescue operation had fostered unprecedented cooperation between the two species, opening new avenues for cultural exchange and diplomatic ties. As they prepared to return to the space station to resume the cultural summit, Joseph and Lara knew they faced a new set of challenges. Their relationship had evolved in ways they never expected, and they now carried the weight of groundbreaking scientific discoveries. Standing on the bridge of the rescue ship, watching the mysterious moon recede in the distance, Joseph turned to Lara. "Ready to face whatever comes next?" he asked softly. Lara's antenna twitched affectionately as she took his hand. "Together," she replied, her voice filled with quiet commitment. As the ship accelerated towards the space station, Joseph and Lara stood side by side, their fingers intertwined. They knew that the true test of their relationship and their roles as ambassadors for interspecies cooperation was yet to come. As the ship docked at the space station, Joseph and Lara exchanged a nervous glance. Their experiences on the mysterious moon had changed them profoundly, and they were unsure how their newfound relationship would be received. The airlock hissed open, revealing a small, welcoming committee. At the forefront stood Admiral Zen, a stern-faced denobulan male whose disapproving gaze swept over Joseph and Lara as they stepped onto the station. His antenna twitched with barely concealed disdain. "Ambassador Perry, Dr. Lara," Admiral Zen said, his voice clipped. "Welcome back. I trust your unplanned excursion was enlightening." Before Joseph could respond, a human woman with warm brown eyes and a shock of curly hair pushed past the Admiral. "Joseph! Lara! Thank goodness you're safe!" Dr. Elena Vasquez, the lead human scientist for the summit, embraced them both. "We have so much to discuss." As they walked through the station's corridors, Joseph felt the weight of Admiral Zen's stare on his back. He leaned closer to Lara, whispering, "I don't think the Admiral approves of our partnership." Lara's antenna drooped slightly. "Many conservative denobulans share his views. We'll have to tread carefully." The cultural summit began the next day. Joseph and Lara stood side by side at the podium, presenting their findings on natural methods for enhancing interspecies compatibility. As they spoke, Joseph noticed a mix of reactions in the audience. Some delegates leaned forward, clearly intrigued, while others, particularly a group of older denobulans, muttered among themselves with furrowed brows. During a break in the proceedings, Joseph found himself near a group of denobulan officials huddled in a corner. He was about to move away when he caught a snippet of their conversation. "Cannot allow this farce to continue," one official hissed. "We must act quickly to discredit their claims and end this summit." Joseph's heart raced as he casually strolled away, seeking out Lara and Dr. Vasquez. He found them chatting near a refreshment table. "We have a problem," he said in a low voice, quickly relaying what he'd overheard. Dr. Vasquez's eyes widened. "Sabotage? But why?" "Some factions are threatened by the idea of interspecies relationships," Lara explained, her antenna twitching anxiously. "They see it as a danger to denobulan genetic purity." "We need to investigate," Joseph said. "But quietly. If we involve security, it might escalate the situation." Using their diplomatic credentials, the trio began a discreet search of the station. They moved through service corridors and restricted areas, following leads and hunches. As they explored a particularly isolated section of the station, Lara's antenna suddenly perked up. "I'm detecting unusual energy readings," she whispered. similar to Dr. Zoral's lab. They rounded a corner and found themselves facing a hidden door. Dr. Vasquez quickly bypassed the security lock, and they slipped inside. The room was a fully equipped laboratory, filled with familiar-looking equipment. Joseph's stomach twisted as he recognized devices similar to those they'd encountered in Dr. Zoral's facility. "They're still pursuing forced biological alterations," Lara said, her voice tight with anger as she examined a nearby console. Suddenly, the door slid open behind them. They whirled around to find Admiral Zen standing in the entrance, flanked by security officers. "I'm disappointed, but not surprised," Zen said, his voice cold. "You've stumbled upon something you weren't meant to see." "Admiral, what is the meaning of this?" Joseph demanded, stepping protectively in front of Lara and Dr. Vasquez. Zen's eyes narrowed. "Meaning? The meaning is the preservation of our species, Ambassador. Your natural methods are a threat to denobulan genetic purity. This technology," he gestured to the lab equipment, "will ensure that humans and denobulans remain physically incompatible." "You're creating a biological weapon," Lara gasped, her antenna quivering with shock. A crooked smile twisted Zen's lips. "A safeguard, nothing more." What happened next was a blur of motion. Joseph lunged for the alarm panel on the wall, while Lara and Dr. Vasquez moved to block the security officers. In the chaos, Zen grabbed a nearby device, a sleek gun-like object that Joseph realized must be the prototype weapon. Alarms blared throughout the station as Zen shoved past them and fled the lab. Without hesitation, Joseph and Lara gave chase, their movements perfectly in sync as they navigated the station's winding corridors. They pursued Zen through crowded common areas, past startled delegates and confused station personnel. Joseph's diplomatic training and Lara's natural agility allowed them to keep pace, even as Zen used his knowledge of the station's layout to try and lose them. Finally, they cornered the Admiral in the station's bustling docking bay. Zen stood near an airlock, the prototype weapon raised threateningly. "Stay back!" he shouted, his antenna rigid with tension. "One step closer, and I'll release this into the station's air supply. Humans and denobulans will never be able to interact again." Joseph and Lara exchanged a quick glance, a silent understanding passing between them. They had faced challenges together before, and they would face this one the same way, as partners. "Admiral," Joseph began, his voice calm and steady, "think about what you're doing. This weapon won't just affect humans and denobulans. It could have unforeseen consequences for all species on this station." Lara stepped forward, her antenna gently swaying in a soothing pattern. "Your duty is to protect and serve, Admiral. How does this action fulfill that duty?" Zen's tenacity seemed to waver, the weapon lowering slightly. "You don't understand. The mixing of our species, it will destroy everything we are. Or it could lead to something greater than either of us could imagine alone," Joseph countered. "Look at what Lara and I have accomplished together. That's the power of cooperation, of understanding." "Change can be frightening," Lara added softly, "but it doesn't have to be a threat. It can be an opportunity for growth for both our peoples." For a long moment, the docking bay was silent save for the distant hum of machinery. Then slowly, Admiral Zen lowered the weapon. "Perhaps," he said, his voice heavy with resignation, "I have been too focused on preserving the past to see the potential of the future." As security forces swarmed the area, taking Zen into custody and securing the weapon, Joseph and Lara found themselves at the center of a whirlwind of activity. Questions flew from all directions. Delegates, security personnel, and station staff all clamoring for answers. In the midst of the chaos, Dr. Vasquez approached them, her eyes shining with excitement. "The summit organizers want to expand the event," she said breathlessly. "They're inviting representatives from other species to join the discussions on interspecies relations and compatibility." Joseph and Lara shared a look of surprise and hope. Their relationship, once viewed with suspicion, was now being held up as an example of what could be achieved through cooperation and understanding. As the expanded summit got underway, Joseph and Lara found themselves thrust into the spotlight. Their story spread quickly, capturing the imagination of humans and denobulans alike. Invitations for interviews and public appearances flooded in, each one an opportunity to share their experiences and promote interspecies understanding. Yet amid the growing public attention, Joseph and Lara began to feel the strain. Finding private moments became increasingly difficult, their schedules packed with meetings, presentations, and media appearances. The constant scrutiny took a toll on them both. One evening, as they finally managed to steal a quiet moment together in their quarters, Lara's antenna drooped with exhaustion. "Joseph," she said softly, "are we doing the right thing? All this attention, it's changing everything." Joseph took her hand, feeling the familiar thrill of connection despite their physiological differences. "I know it's hard," he replied, "but think of the impact we're having. We're changing minds, opening hearts." Before Lara could respond, their communication panel chimed. Another request for an appearance, another demand on their time. As they looked at each other, both knew that their greatest challenge lay ahead, balancing their public roles with their private desires, all while working to build a future where relationships like theirs could flourish without fear or prejudice. The expanded summit loomed before them, promising new challenges and opportunities. As they prepared to face whatever came next, Joseph and Lara drew strength from each other, their unique bond a testament to the power of love and understanding across the stars. As the expanded summit continued, Joseph and Lara found themselves thrust into an unexpected spotlight. Their relationship, once a personal matter, had become a focal point for galactic diplomacy. The announcement from the Galactic Council sent ripples of excitement and apprehension through the station. Ambassador Zix arrived with an entourage of aides and scientists, their unusual forms drawing curious glances from the station's inhabitants. The ambassador, a tall, willowy being with iridescent skin, approached Joseph and Lara with an air of detached interest. "Ambassador Perry, Dr. Lara," Zix said, voice melodious yet devoid of warmth. "Your relationship has garnered significant attention. The Galactic Council believes it may serve as a template for future interspecies partnerships." Joseph felt Lara tense beside him. "We're honored," he replied cautiously, "but I'm not sure we're comfortable being a test case." Zix's skin shimmered, an apparent sign of amusement. "Comfort is irrelevant. The stability of galactic relations is at stake. You will undergo a series of evaluations to determine the viability of your union." The test began immediately. Joseph and Lara found themselves subjected to invasive physical examinations, their bodies scanned and prodded by unfamiliar alien technology. Psychological evaluations followed, with probing questions that left them both feeling exposed and vulnerable. As days turned into weeks, the constant scrutiny began to take its toll. Joseph noticed Lara's antenna drooping more frequently, a sure sign of her distress. He found himself snapping at small annoyances, his patience wearing thin. The breaking point came during a high-stakes simulation. Joseph and Lara stood on a mock-up of the station's bridge, surrounded by holographic displays showing a cascade of system failures. "We need to reroute power from the auxiliary generators," Lara said, her fingers flying over a control panel. Joseph shook his head. "No, we should focus on containing the radiation leak in Section 4. "There's no time for that." Lara's antenna quivered with frustration. "If we don't restore power, we'll lose life support." In his haste to prove his point, Joseph input the wrong command sequence. Alarms blared as the simulation registered a catastrophic failure. The holographic displays flickered and died, leaving them in sudden silence. "What were you thinking?" Lara hissed, her usual composure cracking. "You've killed us all." "It was a mistake," Joseph shot back, his face flushed with anger and embarrassment. "If you had just listened to me—" "Listened to you? Your plan was flawed from the start." They glared at each other, oblivious to the evaluators taking notes nearby. It wasn't until later, as Joseph sat alone in their quarters, that the full weight of what had happened sank in. The following days saw Joseph and Lara spending more time apart. They attended separate meetings, ate at different times, and slept in shift. The station buzzed with rumors about their estrangement. As Joseph walked through the crowded promenade, he overheard snippets of conversation. "Did you hear? The human and the denobulan had a falling out. I always said it wouldn't last. Different species just can't mix." He quickened his pace, trying to ignore the stares and whispers. When he rounded a corner, he nearly collided with Dr. Vasquez. "Joseph, I've been looking for you," she said, her eyes bright with excitement. "You need to see this." In her lab, Dr. Vasquez pulled up a series of complex bioreadings. "We've been analyzing the data from your initial compatibility exercises on the moon," she explained. "There's something remarkable happening between you and Lara." Joseph leaned in, trying to make sense of the swirling patterns on the screen. "What am I looking at?" "It's a type of physiological synchronization," Dr. Vasquez said. "When you and Lara work together, your bodies actually attune to each other. It enhances your performance, especially under stress." Joseph's mind raced. Could this explain the ease he'd always felt working with Lara? The intuitive understanding they shared? He found Lara in the arboretum, standing before a flowering plant with drooping purple blossoms. She tensed as he approached, but didn't move away. "Lara," he began, his voice soft. "We need to talk." As he explained Dr. Vasquez's discovery, he saw a spark of interest in Lara's eyes. They began to discuss the implications, their earlier argument forgotten as they slipped into the familiar rhythm of scientific debate. "We've been looking at this all wrong," Joseph said suddenly. "We've been trying to prove ourselves to others when we should have been focusing on what makes us work." Lara's antenna perked up. "What are you suggesting?" "I say we take control of this narrative, show them what we can do on our terms." Together they approached Ambassador Zix with a bold proposal, a joint mission to an unexplored planet where they would establish first contact with a newly discovered sentient species. Zix's skin rippled with intrigue. "Interesting. The Council will want to observe this closely." As preparations for the mission began, Joseph and Lara found themselves working in perfect sync once again. The station's mood shifted, excitement replacing skepticism as news of their daring plans spread. Standing on the bridge of their small exploration vessel, Joseph and Lara watched the space station recede into the distance. The unknown planet loomed ahead, a blue-green jewel against the backdrop of unfamiliar stars. "Ready for this?" Joseph asked, echoing a question he'd asked long ago on another momentous journey. Lara's hand found his, their fingers intertwining despite their physiological differences. "Together," she replied, her voice filled with restored dedication. As the ship entered warp drive, Joseph and Lara turned their attention to the mission briefing. The limited data on the planet's inhabitants scrolled across their screens, presenting a myriad of challenges and possibilities. "Look at this atmospheric composition," Lara mused, her antenna twitching with curiosity. "It's unlike anything we've encountered before." Joseph nodded, studying the geological scans. "And these terrain formations, they could indicate an advanced civilization." As they delved deeper into the information, formulating plans and contingencies, both were acutely aware of the stakes. This mission was more than a diplomatic assignment or a test of their relationship. It was a chance to prove that diversity could be a strength, that differences could be bridged not just between individuals, but between entire species. The ship hummed around them, carrying Joseph and Lara towards an uncertain future. Whatever challenges awaited them on the alien world, they would face them as they had faced every obstacle since their fateful meeting. Together, two beings from different worlds, united in purpose and in heart. Love. As their ship emerged from warp, Joseph and Lara were greeted by the sight of XR-7, a blue-green jewel suspended in the vast expanse of space. The planet's twin moons hung like silent sentinels, their surfaces reflecting the light of an unfamiliar star. "Initiating orbital insertion," Joseph announced, his fingers dancing across the control panel. "Lara, can you run a preliminary scan of the surface?" Lara nodded, her antenna twitching as she focused on the data streaming across her screen. "Atmospheric composition looks promising. Oxygen levels are within acceptable parameters for both humans and denobulans." Their moment of calm was short-lived as proximity alarms blared throughout the ship. Joseph's eyes widened as he saw the cause. "Asteroid field dead ahead." For the next heart-pounding minutes, Joseph and Lara worked in perfect synchronization. Joseph's piloting skills were put to the test as he navigated the treacherous field, while Lara provided real-time analysis of the asteroid's trajectories. "Bank left," Lara called out, her voice steady despite the tension. Large cluster approaching on the starboard side. Joseph responded instantly, guiding their vessel through a narrow gap between two massive rocks. The ship shuddered as smaller debris impacted their shields, but held steady. As they emerged from the asteroid field, both Joseph and Lara let out a collective sigh of relief. Their teamwork had been flawless, a testament to their deep connection and shared experiences. With the immediate danger past, they turned their attention back to XR7. The planet's surface came into sharper focus as they began their descent, revealing vast swaths of lush vegetation interspersed with sprawling bodies of water. "I'm detecting signs of a pre-industrial civilization," Lara reported, her antenna quivering with excitement. "Concentrated in the northern hemisphere." Joseph nodded, a mix of anticipation and nervousness fluttering in his stomach. "Let's set down near one of their settlements. We'll need to be careful not to cause any undue alarm." They chose a clearing about a kilometer from the nearest settlement, guiding their ship to a gentle landing among the alien flora. As the engines powered down, Joseph and Lara shared a meaningful look. "Ready?" Joseph asked, echoing their familiar exchange. Lara's hand found his, squeezing gently. "Together," she affirmed. As they stepped out of the airlock, they were immediately struck by the planet's alien beauty. The air was thick with sweet, unfamiliar scents, and a soft violet light bathed the landscape, cast by the twin moons hanging low in the sky. Joseph took a deep breath, marveling at the ease with which he could breathe the alien atmosphere. "It's remarkable," he said, his voice hushed with awe. "The air, it's almost invigorating." Lara nodded, her scientific curiosity piqued. "The atmospheric composition must have some unique properties. We should collect samples for further analysis." As they made their way towards the settlement, the sounds of alien wildlife echoed through the trees. Strange, multi-limbed creatures scurried away at their approach, while bird-like beings with iridescent wings soared overhead. The settlement came into view as they crested a small hill. Low domed structures sprawled out before them, their surfaces shimmering with an odd pearlescent quality. Movement caught their eye, and they saw the inhabitants for the first time. The aliens were tall and slender, with skin that seemed to shift colors like oil on water. Their large, expressive eyes dominated their faces, reflecting the violet light of the moons. Joseph and Lara exchanged a glance before activating their universal translators. They took a few steps forward, hands raised in what they hoped was a universal gesture of peace. The reaction was immediate. The nearest aliens let out high-pitched trills of alarm, their skin flashing rapidly through a spectrum of colors. Several retreated into the domed structures, while others stood their ground, their postures tense and wary. "We come in peace," Joseph called out, his translator converting his words into a series of melodic whistles and clicks. One of the aliens, taller than the rest and with a more vibrant skin tone, stepped forward. Its eyes narrowed as it studied Joseph and Lara. "You are not of this world," the alien said, its words rendered in stilted but understandable speech by the translator. Lara nodded, her antenna drooping slightly in a gesture of respect. "We are visitors from distant stars. We mean you no harm and wish only to learn about your people." The alien's skin rippled, a cascade of blues and greens washing over its form. "I am Jira, leader of this settlement. You say you come in peace, yet you arrive unannounced in a strange vessel. How can we trust your words?" Joseph stepped forward, but noticed the alien's attention remained fixed on Lara. He recalled their briefing on the planet's matriarchal society and realized he would need to adjust his approach. "Perhaps," Joseph suggested quietly to Lara, "you should take the lead here." Lara nodded almost imperceptibly before addressing Jira. "We understand your caution. We are explorers, seeking to expand our knowledge of the galaxy and its inhabitants. We would be honored to share our story with you and learn of your people in return." Jira's skin slowly settled into a calmer pattern of soft blues. "Your words are intriguing. Come, we will speak more in the Hall of Elders." As they followed Jira into the settlement, Joseph and Lara marveled at the intricate patterns etched into the walls of the dome structures. The design seemed to pulse with a faint bioluminescence, creating an otherworldly ambiance. The Hall of Elders was a larger dome at the center of the settlement. Inside, a circle of the tall, willowy aliens awaited them, their skin shimmering with anticipation. As Lara began to explain their mission and the concept of a wider galactic community, Joseph noticed something odd. The aliens seemed to be communicating without speaking, subtle changes in their skin patterns and minute gestures, conveying complex ideas. His suspicions were confirmed when one of the elders interrupted Lara's explanation. "You speak of distant worlds and advanced technologies, yet you rely on crude devices to translate our words. Can you not simply feel our thoughts?" Joseph and Lara exchanged a puzzled look. "Feel your thoughts?" Lara asked, her antenna twitching with curiosity. Jira's skin rippled with what might have been amusement. "You truly are from beyond the stars if you do not know of the empathic dance. Come, we will show you." As the aliens began to move in a complex swaying pattern, Joseph and Lara felt a strange tingling sensation wash over them. The air seemed to crackle with unseen energy, and suddenly they found themselves awash in a sea of alien emotions and half-formed thoughts. "Incredible," Lara breathed, her eyes wide with wonder. "They're manipulating bioelectric fields to communicate." Joseph nodded, equally amazed. "This could explain the physiological synchronization Dr. Vasquez discovered between us. Maybe we've been tapping into something similar without realizing it." As they marveled at this revelation, neither Joseph nor Lara noticed the flashing light on their communicators, warning of an incoming transmission from a rapidly approaching Galactic Council vessel. The sudden intrusion snapped Joseph and Lara out of their shared empathic experience, bringing them back to the pressing reality of their mission. "We've got incoming," Joseph said, his voice tinged with urgency as he checked the communicator. "It's Ambassador Zix." Lara's antenna twitched nervously. "We need to brief them quickly on our situation here." Before they could formulate a response, another alarm blared from their ship's computer. Joseph's eyes widened as he read the alert. "Pirate vessel detected entering the system. ETA, 2 hours." The Shinra elders, sensing the sudden shift in mood, ceased their empathic dance. Jira stepped forward, her skin pulsing with concern. "What troubles you, off-worlders?" Lara took a deep breath, her mind racing. "We have multiple situations developing. Our superiors are approaching, and there's a potential threat to your world." Joseph nodded, his diplomatic training kicking in. "Jira, we need to prepare your people for the possibility of danger. The approaching ship may have hostile intentions." The Hall of Elders erupted in a cascade of color changes and subtle movements as the Shinra communicated among themselves. After a moment, Jira turned back to Joseph and Lara. "We will trust in your experience. Guide us." With time of the essence, Joseph and Lara quickly divided their tasks. "I'll organize the Shinra defenses," Joseph said. "You focus on preparing our report for Ambassador Zix." Lara nodded, her antenna quivering with dedication. "Agreed. We need to emphasize the importance of the Shinra to the galactic community." As Lara hurried back to their ship to compile their findings, Joseph turned to address the Shinra elders. "Your ability to manipulate bioelectric fields could be a powerful defense against invaders. We need to organize and prepare your people quickly." Over the next hour, Joseph worked tirelessly with the Shinra, teaching them basic defensive tactics. He showed them how to use their natural abilities to create confusion and disorientation in potential attackers. The Shinra, though initially hesitant, proved to be quick learners. "Focus your energy like this," Joseph demonstrated, using a makeshift diagram. A concentrated burst could temporarily disable their weapons or communication devices. As the Shinra practiced, Joseph helped them fortify the settlement. They used local materials to create barricades and lookout points, transforming the peaceful village into a primitive fortress. Meanwhile, Lara pored over their data, meticulously documenting their discoveries about Shinra culture and biology. She carefully detailed their experience with the empathic ritual, noting the physiological changes without delving into the personal aspects of their encounter. As night fell, the pirate ship entered XR-7's atmosphere. Joseph and the Shinra defenders took up their positions around the settlement, their skin shimmering with nervous anticipation. The pirates' ship, a patchwork vessel of salvage parts, landed on the outskirts of the village. A diverse crew of aliens emerged, led by a towering Orion with a cybernetic eye. Joseph recognized him from wanted bulletins. Captain Draz, a notorious smuggler and mercenary. Lara joined Joseph at the defensive line, her report completed and transmitted to the approaching Galactic Council vessel. As they stood side by side, they felt their enhanced empathic connections snap into focus, allowing them to coordinate without words. Captain Draz's voice boomed across the clearing. "We know you're out there. This planet's resources belong to us now. Surrender, and we might let you live." Joseph and Lara exchanged a glance, then nodded to Jira. The Shinra leader's skin flashed a brilliant pattern, signaling her people to action. As the pirates advanced, they were met with a wave of bioelectric energy. The air crackled with invisible force, causing their weapons to spark and malfunction. Several pirates stumbled, disoriented by the sudden assault on their senses. Joseph and Lara sprang into action, using their knowledge of alien physiologies to target weak points in the pirates' defenses. Joseph grappled with a Klingon raider, using the alien's own momentum to throw him off balance. Lara, her denobulan flexibility coming into play, evaded a Nausicaa's wild swings before landing a precise strike to a nerve cluster, temporarily paralyzing her attacker. The Shinra, emboldened by the off-worlder's bravery, intensified their bioelectric assault. The air shimmered with energy as they projected waves of confusion and disorientation towards the invaders. Overwhelmed by the unexpected resistance, the pirates began to retreat. Captain Draz, his cybernetic eye glowing with fury, bellowed orders to his crew as they fell back to their ship. For a moment, it seemed victory was at hand. Then, with a deafening hum, the pirate ship's main cannon swiveled towards the village. Captain Draz's voice crackled over a loudspeaker. "Enough games! Surrender now, or we'll reduce this entire settlement to ash." Joseph and Lara froze, the weight of their decision pressing down on them. The safety of the Shinra hung in the balance against their mission objectives. Suddenly, the sky lit up with the arrival of a massive ship. The Galactic Council vessel dropped out of warp, its imposing presence immediately detected by both the pirates and the exploration ship's AI. "This is Ambassador Zix of the Galactic Council," a stern voice broadcasted across all frequencies. "Stand down immediately or face the consequences of your actions." Captain Draz hesitated, his ship's cannons still aimed at the village. For a tense moment, the fate of XR-7 hung in the balance. Then, with a frustrated growl, the Orion powered down his weapons. "You win this round," he snarled. As the Council's peacekeeping forces descended to secure the area and apprehend the pirates, Joseph and Lara shared a moment of relief. Their gambit had paid off, but they knew their trials were not nearly finished. Ambassador Zix's personal shuttle touched down near the village. The imposing Tellarite diplomat strode towards them, his expression unreadable. "Quite a situation you've managed to create here," he rumbled. Joseph and Lara stood at attention, acutely aware that their actions and their deepened connection would now be under intense scrutiny. As the first rays of XR-7's sun peeked over the horizon, they prepared themselves for the challenges that lay ahead. As the first rays of XR-7's sun illuminated the village, Joseph and Lara found themselves aboard the Galactic Council vessel, undergoing thorough medical examinations. The ship's advanced medical bay hummed with activity as holographic displays flickered with real-time data. Dr. Vex, a multi-armed Rigelian physician, frowned at the readings. "Fascinating," he muttered, adjusting a sensor array hovering over Joseph's head. "Your neural pathways have undergone significant alterations." Lara, on an adjacent biobed, felt a surge of concern that wasn't entirely her own. She turned to Joseph, their eyes meeting across the room. Without a word, she knew he felt it too. Dr. Vex's voice cut through their silent exchange. "It appears the Shinra ritual has created a permanent empathic link between you two. I've never seen anything quite like it." Joseph sat up, his brow furrowed. "Is it dangerous?" "Unknown," Dr. Vex replied, his multiple arms working various instruments simultaneously. "The long-term effects of such a bond are, well, we simply don't have any precedent for this." As the medical staff continued their examinations, Ambassador Zix was deep in negotiations with the Shinra matriarchs in the ship's conference room. The willowy alien skin rippled with a mix of excitement and apprehension as they discussed their potential future in the galactic community. "Your abilities are truly remarkable," Zix rumbled, his Tellarite features set in a grave expression. "But they also make you vulnerable to exploitation. We must proceed with caution." Jira, her skin pulsing a soft blue, leaned forward. "We understand your concerns, Ambassador, but we believe joining your community offers us the best chance for growth and protection." Before Zix could respond, an urgent alert blared through the ship's communication system. "Ambassador," a tense voice reported, "we've detected a large fleet entering the system. Orion's signatures confirmed." Zix's eyes widened. "How did they—" He cut himself off, turning to the Shinra matriarchs. "We don't have time for formalities. I'm granting you provisional membership in the Galactic Council, effective immediately." As Zix rushed to the bridge to call for reinforcements, Joseph and Lara were summoned from the medical bay. They entered the ship's bustling command center, their newly strengthened bond allowing them to navigate the chaos with uncanny synchronization. "We need you two to coordinate our ground defenses," Zix ordered, his attention split between multiple holographic displays. "Your unique connection might be the edge we need." Joseph and Lara exchanged a glance, a wealth of unspoken communication passing between them in an instant. They nodded in unison and set to work. As the Orion fleet engaged the hastily assembled Galactic Council Defense Force in orbit, Joseph led a mixed team of Shinra and Council security forces to fortify the main settlement. Lara established a makeshift command center, her fingers dancing over holographic interfaces as she coordinated with the ships above. "Joseph," Lara's voice came through his communicator, tinged with an urgency he could feel in his bones. "Orion dropships incoming. ETA 3 minutes. "Copy that," Joseph replied, gesturing to his team. They took up defensive positions, the Shinra's skin shimmering with nervous energy. The first wave of Orion forces hit hard, their disruptor fire cutting through the air. Joseph's team responded with a combination of Council energy weapons and coordinated bioelectric bursts from the Shinra. Through their link, Joseph sensed Lara's sudden spike of alarm. "Joseph, watch out! They're using—" Before she could finish, Joseph saw several of his Shinra allies collapse, writhing in pain. He ducked behind a barricade, narrowly avoiding a burst of energy from a strange pulsing weapon. "Neural disruptors," Joseph growled, relaying the information back to Lara, "specifically designed for Shinra physiology." He felt a wave of willpower wash over him, Lara's emotions mingling with his own. "Understood," she replied, "working on a countermeasure now." As the battle raged on, Joseph found himself moving with an almost preternatural awareness. He could anticipate enemy movements a split second before they happened, his reflexes enhanced by his connection to Lara's overarching view of the battlefield. Suddenly, a new alert pinged in Joseph's mind, accompanied by a surge of dread from Lara. "Joseph, Orion Commander detected near the Sacred Grove. He's carrying a high-yield plasma bomb." Without hesitation, Joseph sprinted towards the ancient trees, trusting his team to hold the line. As he ran, he felt Lara's presence in his mind, guiding him towards his target. He burst into a clearing just as a towering Orion was setting the device against the trunk of a massive glowing tree. The alien's cybernetic eye whirred as it locked onto Joseph. "Kraz," Joseph breathed, recognizing the notorious Orion commander from intelligence briefings. Kraz grinned, his green skin glistening with sweat. "Too late, human. This planet's resources will be ours, one way or another." Joseph lunged forward, drawing on his combat training and the steady flow of calm focus he felt from Lara. Kraz met his charge with brutal efficiency, his augmented strength nearly overwhelming. As they grappled amidst the bioluminescent foliage, Joseph found himself moving in perfect harmony with Lara's distant presence. He anticipated Kraz's strikes, weaving and countering with fluid grace. With a final decisive move, Joseph managed to flip Kraz over his shoulder, sending the Orion crashing into the forest floor. Before Kraz could recover, Joseph had him pinned, the plasma bomb deactivated and kicked safely aside. As the sounds of battle began to fade, replaced by the cheers of victorious defenders, Joseph felt a wave of relief and affection wash over him. He looked up to see Lara running towards him, her antenna quivering with emotion. They embraced, their connection humming with shared joy and exhaustion. But as the adrenaline faded, a new realization dawned on them both. Their bond had grown even stronger during the conflict, their minds more entwined than ever before. Ambassador Zix approached, his expression a mix of admiration and concern. "Impressive work, both of you, but I'm afraid our challenges are nowhere near the end." He paused, his gaze moving between them. "The Council has called for a full hearing regarding your unique situation." Joseph and Lara stood side by side, their hands instinctively finding each other. They knew that the battle for XR7 was won, but the fight for their future, and potentially the future of interspecies relations throughout the galaxy, was just beginning. As the sun set on the war-torn planet, Joseph and Lara boarded the shuttle that would take them back to the Galactic Council headquarters. Whatever trials lay ahead, they would face them together, in body, mind, and spirit. Spirit. As the shuttle docked with the massive Galactic Council space station, Joseph and Lara felt a mixture of awe and apprehension. The station's gleaming spires and interconnected modules stretched out before them, a testament to the collaborative efforts of hundreds of species. They disembarked, their hands instinctively intertwined. The bustling docking bay was a cacophony of sights and sounds, with beings of all shapes and sizes hurrying about their business. Joseph sensed Lara's nervousness through their bond and gave her hand a reassuring squeeze. A stern-faced Andorian official approached them. "Joseph Chen and Lara Elos?" At their nod, he continued, "Follow me. You're expected in preparation room 17B." As they walked through the station's winding corridors, Joseph and Lara couldn't help but notice the curious glances and hushed whispers that followed them. Their unique situation had clearly preceded their arrival. The preparation room was a stark utilitarian space. Waiting for them was a tall, slender Vulcan woman with sharp features and piercing dark eyes. She rose as they entered, raising her hand in the traditional Vulcan salute. "I am T'Prel, your assigned legal counsel," she said, her voice crisp and emotionless. "Please, be seated. We have much to discuss." Joseph and Lara sat across from T'Prel, their knees touching beneath the table. Through their empathic link, they shared a moment of mutual support before focusing on the Vulcan. T'Prel wasted no time with pleasantries. "The hearing will address 3 primary concerns," she began, her fingers steepled before her. "First, the ethical implications of your empathic bond. Second, the potential security risks posed by your enhanced abilities. And third, the impact of your relationship on interspecies diplomacy." Lara's antenna twitched nervously. "What kind of evidence will we need to provide?" "You will undergo a series of medical and psychological evaluations," T'Prel replied. "These will form the basis of our defense. I must warn you, the test may be invasive." Joseph felt a flicker of unease through his connection with Lara. He leaned forward, his expression determined. "We'll do whatever it takes." The next few days were a whirlwind of activity. Joseph and Lara were subjected to a battery of tests, each more grueling than the last. They were poked, prodded, and scanned by an array of alien medical devices. Xenobiologists peppered them with questions about their experiences, while psychologists probed the depths of their bond. During a particularly intense neural scan, Joseph found himself overwhelmed by the conflicting emotions surging through their link. He gritted his teeth, focusing on projecting calm towards Lara. "Fascinating," muttered the Tellarite neurologist, her snout twitching as she studied the holographic display of their brain activity. "Their neural patterns are becoming increasingly synchronized. Look at this spike in theta wave activity when they're in proximity." As they moved through the station between appointments, Joseph and Lara encountered a wide range of reactions from the diverse array of species present for the upcoming hearing. A group of betazoids watched them pass with undisguised fascination, while a cluster of Ferengi whispered excitedly about the potential profit in marketing their story. Not all reactions were positive, however. As they rounded a corner, they nearly collided with a hulking Nausicaan diplomat. The alien's face contorted in disgust. "Abominations!" he spat, shouldering past them roughly. Lara flinched at the hostility, but Joseph steadied her with a gentle touch on her arm. They didn't need words to comfort each other anymore. The stress of the constant scrutiny began to take its toll. One evening, as they sat in their assigned quarters reviewing data with T'Prel, Lara suddenly stood and walked to the viewport, her arms wrapped tightly around herself. "Lara?" Joseph called, concern evident in his voice. She turned to face him, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears. What if this isn't real?" she whispered. "What if our feelings are just a byproduct of the Shinra ritual?" Joseph rose to join her, but T'Prel's voice stopped him. "This line of questioning is precisely what the Council will pursue," the Vulcan said, her tone neutral. "You must be prepared to defend the authenticity of your bond." The night before the hearing, T'Prel finally granted them a few hours of privacy. Joseph and Lara found themselves drawn to a quiet observation deck, the vastness of space stretching out before them. They stood in silence for a long moment, their empathic link humming with a tumult of emotions. Finally, Lara spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "Whatever happens tomorrow, I want you to know." Joseph turned to her, cupping her face gently in his hands. Without a word, he leaned in and kissed her deeply. Their bond flared to life, filling them both with a warmth and certainty that washed away their doubts. As they broke apart, breathless, a voice crackled over the intercom. "Joseph Chen and Lara Elos, please report to Preparation Room 17B immediately." They hurried to meet T'Prel, who greeted them with an arched eyebrow. "New evidence has come to light," she said without preamble. "A group of rogue scientists has been conducting illegal experiments, attempting to artificially recreate your empathic bond." Joseph felt a chill run down his spine. "What happened?" T'Prel's expression remained impassive, but her voice held a note of gravity. "The results were catastrophic. Many test subjects suffered severe psychological trauma. Some did not survive." Lara gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Through their link, Joseph felt her horror and revulsion at the news. "This development adds a new dimension to your hearing," T'Prel continued. "The Council must now consider the potential consequences of allowing your bond to continue in light of these tragic events." As the gravity of the situation sank in, Joseph and Lara exchanged a look of grit. They knew that their testimony could shape the future of interspecies relations for generations to come. The next morning, they donned their formal attire in silence, their empathic link thrumming with a mixture of anxiety and purpose. As they approached the Grand Council chamber, T'Prel gave them a final piece of advice. "Remember, your bond is unique. Do not allow the Council to conflate it with the atrocities committed by these rogue scientists." The massive doors of the chamber swung open, revealing a vast amphitheater filled with representatives from every known spacefaring race. At the center, a panel of judges from the most respected species in the galaxy sat ready to hear their case. Joseph and Lara paused at the threshold, their hands clasped tightly together. Through their empathic link, they shared a moment of perfect understanding and unity. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. With a deep breath, they stepped forward into the chamber, ready to defend their bond and fight for their future in a galaxy that suddenly seemed more uncertain than ever before. With a deep breath, they stepped forward into the chamber, ready to defend their bond and fight for their future in a galaxy that suddenly seemed more uncertain than ever. As Joseph and Lara entered the Grand Council chamber, a hush fell over the assembled representatives. The cavernous room, with its soaring ceilings and ornate architecture, seemed to swallow the sound of their footsteps. Hundreds of eyes from countless species followed their every move as they made their way to the center of the floor. The lead judge, a venerable Arcturian with iridescent skin and wise, multifaceted eyes, raised a tendril-like appendage. "This hearing is now in session." The judge's voice resonated, a melodic tone that carried effortlessly through the chamber. "Joseph Chen of Earth and Lara Elos of Denobula, you stand before this council to address the nature and implications of your empathic bond." Joseph felt Lara's fingers tighten around his, and through their connection, he sensed her mixture of nervousness and grit. He gave her hand a gentle squeeze, projecting calm reassurance. Over the next several hours, they presented their case, recounting their experiences from the initial misunderstanding to their pivotal role in defending XR7. As they spoke, their empathic bond allowed them to seamlessly complement each other's statements, providing a compelling demonstration of their unique connection. When the Orion forces attacked, Joseph explained, his voice steady despite the emotional weight of the memory, our bond allowed us to coordinate the defense with unprecedented efficiency. Lara seamlessly continued, her antenna quivering slightly as she spoke. We could anticipate each other's thoughts and actions, moving as one to protect the sacred grove and neutralize the threat. The council watched in fascination as the couple navigated complex questions with remarkable synchronicity. Representatives from various species leaned forward in their seats, clearly intrigued by the harmonious interplay between human and denobulan. Midway through the proceedings, an unexpected witness was called. The council calls Dr. Elena Vasquez, announced the Arcturian judge. A slender woman with salt and pepper hair strode confidently to the center of the chamber. Joseph recognized her as the lead xenobiologist who had conducted many of their tests. Dr. Vasquez's eyes met theirs briefly, offering a small, encouraging smile. Dr. Vasquez, please present your findings, the judge instructed. The scientist nodded, activating a holographic display that filled the air above her. Complex diagrams of neural pathways and biochemical markers appeared, rotating slowly for all to see. Distinguished members of the council, Dr. Vasquez began, her voice clear and authoritative. My team has conducted extensive research on the physiological changes experienced by Joseph Chen and Lara Elos. Our latest findings reveal that their empathic bond has stabilized and shows no signs of degradation or negative health effects. A murmur rippled through the assembled representatives. Joseph felt a surge of hope through his connection with Lara. Dr. Vasquez continued, pointing to specific areas of the holographic display. As you can see here, the neural pathways associated with their bond have strengthened over time. More importantly, we've observed no adverse effects on their individual cognitive functions or overall health. In fact, some indicators suggest enhanced mental acuity and emotional stability in both subjects. The doctor's testimony seemed to sway several skeptical council members. Joseph noticed a Vulcan representative nodding thoughtfully, while a group of Andorians engaged in hushed discussion. As Dr. Vasquez concluded her presentation, the main doors of the chamber swung open. A group of Shinra, their bioluminescent skin pulsing with subtle patterns, entered the room. Joseph recognized Trelax, the elder who had performed the ritual that had inadvertently created their bond. Honored Council, Trelax announced, his voice resonating with a musical quality, we have journeyed from XR7 to speak on behalf of Joseph and Lara. The Arcturian judge inclined their head. The council recognizes the Shinra delegation. Please, share your testimony. Trelax moved to the center of the chamber, his fellows forming a semicircle behind him. What Joseph and Lara share is not an aberration or a threat, he began, his skin glowing more brightly with each word. It is a gift, a bridge between worlds that we had only dreamed possible. The Shinra elders' impassioned plea for acceptance of interspecies relationships resonated with many in the chamber. Joseph felt a swell of gratitude, both his own and Lara's, as their friends from XR7 spoke in their defense. As the Shinra concluded their testimony, a familiar figure rose from the audience. Ambassador Zix, his tentacles swaying gently, approached the council. Joseph tensed slightly, remembering the ambassador's initial wariness about their bond. Esteemed members of the council, Zix began, his voice carrying a weight of authority, I stand before you today not as a skeptic, but as an advocate for Joseph Chen and Lara Elos. Joseph's eyebrows rose in surprise, a sentiment mirrored by Lara through their link. Zix continued, his words measured and sincere. I have witnessed firsthand the power of their connection, not just in combat, but in fostering understanding between our peoples. Their unique bond represents a new frontier in interspecies cooperation, one that could lead us to a more harmonious galaxy. As the ambassador spoke, Joseph felt a surge of hope. He turned to Lara, their eyes meeting in a moment of shared optimism. Perhaps, just perhaps, their love story might have a happy ending after all. The council chamber buzzed with excitement and debate as the testimonies concluded. The lead judge called for order, announcing that the council would now deliberate on their decision. As Joseph and Lara were ushered to a waiting area, they clasped hands tightly, their bond humming with a mixture of anxiety and hope for what the future might hold.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.